Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenos días. Tengan todas y todos ustedes que nos siguen tanto por YouTube como por redes sociales. Sean bienvenidas y bienvenidos a este webinar de negocios internacionales que ha sido organizado entre la sede de la UNAM Chicago, quienes nos encontramos también aquí conectados para saludarles a todas y a todos ustedes, y la Facultad de Contaduría y Administración de la UNAM. Así es que primero que nada, un especial saludo por parte de los directores, el doctor Guillermo Pulido, director de la sede UNAM Chicago, y el maestro Tomás Rubio, quien es director de la Facultad de Contaduría y Administración de la UNAM. Bien, es un gusto saludarles esta mañana y darles la bienvenida a nuestro programa. Es un programa que tendremos durante toda esta semana. Se llevará a cabo en inglés y algunas presentaciones en español, y que las y los invitamos a seguirnos por nuestras redes sociales, tanto del canal de UNAM Chicago como de YouTube, como el canal de la Facultad de Contaduría y Administración de FSA UNAM oficial, también para que nos sigan. Pues bien, una de las principales colaboraciones dentro de este programa es con la Cámara de Comercio Hispana de Illinois, por lo cual me permito presentar a Jaime Di Paulo, que está aquí con nosotros. Él es presidente y director ejecutivo, CEO, de la organización líder, que es esta Cámara de Comercio, en creación de redes de negocio, defensa y desarrollo de empresas hispanas en el Medio Oeste. Bajo su liderazgo, desde el 2019, el equipo de la Cámara Hispana de Comercio intensificó su compromiso de ayudar a la comunidad empresarial latina, brindando asistencia directa y trabajando en estrecha colaboración con todas las partes interesadas. Como CEO, Di Paulo ha buscado multiplicar las redes de negocio con varias cámaras de comercio a nivel local y nacional, trabajando con ellas para llevar recursos a la comunidad de pequeñas empresas. Bien, Jaime Di Paulo, te dejo el uso de la voz, por favor, para lo que nos gustas compartir. Muchas gracias nuevamente.
¿Qué tal? Muy buenos días y gracias por todo estar aquí. Me dijeron que tenía que hablar en inglés, so I will speak in English right now. It is with great pleasure to be speaking to UNAM. That's my university. I graduated from UNAM in 1988, so I'm very proud of that. And I was at the campus a couple of weeks ago with the mayor of Chicago visiting UNAM. We signed several agreements, so there's going to be some huge opportunities for students to come and visit us and do some practices and work over here in Chicago, especially with small businesses. So thank you so much for that introduction. Also, the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce has been around for 31 years. There's about 125,000 Latino businesses in the state of Illinois, which we pretty much represent. We don't represent all of them, but we make sure we have our touch and feel with every single one of them, and we address issues that matters to them. And our mission is to have those businesses grow and become profitable. So with that, we have several programs in our chamber. We have a small business development center, which only mission is to help businesses register and grow and become access to capital friendly and access to workshops and all that stuff. We also have a lot of our programs is focused on procurement. I don't know if you guys know what procurement means, but procurement in Spanish is no translation, but procurement basically means access. In the United States, every government contract that's out there has a definition of minority-owned enterprise needs to be involved. So we are in charge of helping minority-owned companies like Latinos, veterans, people, African-American community, Asians, and women are considered minority-owned businesses if they have the right certification so they can access those wonderful government contracts. So we help them to do that through our programs, which is the Procurement Technical Assistance Center here in our office. We also have a unique program with the SPTRC, Small Business Transportation Resource Centers, which helps Latino and minority-owned companies access United States Department of Transportation contracts, not just in Illinois, but in the 5 states region around the Great Lakes region. We also have the Illinois Tollway, which another opportunity for minority-owned companies have access to those wonderful contracts. And we're very proud of this. We are one of 8 Tier 1 organizations in the United States that were awarded the United States Pilot Navigator Program. So what we do there is we consult and go walk the business corridors and talk to businesses, so give them access to make sure we assess them and give them the resources they need in order to succeed. With the pandemic, we lost about 20% of our business stock, but the federal government was kind enough to inject a lot of dollars into the community so they can help businesses thrive and not close. So a lot of those dollars came to chambers of commerce or nonprofit organizations like ours. And what we do is we walk around the state, and some of our navigators are here present that will talk to you about what they do. So we are very, very big organization. We are 18 full-time employees. It's a little bit smaller to the standards of chambers of commerce in Mexico. Here is very unique because we are the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. There's many chambers of commerce. Every neighborhood, for example, in Chicago has a chamber of commerce. There's 77 neighborhoods in the city of Chicago, and pretty much every single neighborhood has some type of business association. There's also the Black Chamber of Commerce, which takes care of the African-American community. There's Asian Chamber of Commerce and Indian Chamber of Commerce with the Indian community. And there's the regular Chambers of Commerce. So a Chamber of Commerce is a different model than in Mexico, for example. In Mexico, you got the Concamin, the Concanaco, and all those guys, but they're geared to, for the main focus is to focus not just on small businesses, but in big corporations. In the United States, chambers of commerce are the other way around. We focus on small businesses to do business with big corporations. So that's the difference. So we are one of the biggest chambers of commerce, not just in Illinois or the Midwest, around the country. And we're very proud of that. And I have an incredible team that does the work day in, day out. And you're going to meet him today. You're going to meet Jacob Perez here, Esteban Perez. And Uriel Mendez, part of our team that do a lot of stuff with the businesses, because our focus and our solely mission here is to help small businesses grow. Not just Latinos, but obviously, because we are a Latino organization, we focus on Latinos only. So with that, I'll leave it to them, and it's with great pleasure. And thank you so much for having me. And please enjoy this wonderful workshop you guys are going to hear, and the wonderful the great professionals you're going to hear from today in part of the ICC team. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Jaime. Thank you for your help, for being here, and thanks for your message. Well, so I'm going to introduce you, Uriel Mendez. Uriel is SVDC Business Advisor and Project Coordinator, and he also is working with Jaime and with the team today. So please, Uriel, I know that you have something to share to us, please.
Thank you very much, Mitzi, and say like Jaime, we are very excited to provide this very important information. Like you say, Mitzi, my name is Uriel Mendez. I am Business Advisor, Project Coordinator for the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. With my colleagues, Jacob and Esteban, and they provide you so much information about different programs. Thank you again for this big opportunity for Jaime and me to stay here in this big, amazing presentation. Thank you, Mitzi.
Thank you, Uriel. So at least I want to introduce Marco Fuentes. Marco Fuentes works in UNAM Chicago, and he's in charge also with us about all the conference and all the program that we have for you this week. So please, Marco, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Such a pleasure having you here. I really appreciate the help of the Illinois Commerce Chambers. They are always willing to help us. So it's really amazing to have this opportunity for our students in Mexico to have a little bit of taste of what is to exercise, international business in the US, specifically here in Chicago. So hopefully you can take full advantage of it, and yes, enjoy this event with these wonderful lecturers that we have here. Thank you so much, Mitzi. Thank you so much, Uriel, Jacob, Esteban, and of course, Jaime.
Thanks, Marco. So we're going to work all this week, and so we're so happy for that. Okay, so I'm going to introduce now all the conference that we're going to have today. So the first one is with Esteban Perez. So Esteban Perez is a Latin Incubator Director. So I'm going to introduce him. He's going to share his presentation also, but I'm going to introduce him, and this is in Spanish, so I'm going to change. Esteban es asesor comercial en el Centro de Desarrollo de Pequeñas Empresas de Illinois, en la Cámara de Comercio, Cámara Hispana de Comercio de Illinois, con especialización en contabilidad y finanzas. Después de graduarse de la Universidad DePaul, con una licenciatura en Ciencias en Contabilidad, Esteban aceptó trabajos en pequeñas empresas en Chicago, organizando sus finanzas y controles operativos para poder analizar el rendimiento con información inteligente. Su experiencia es en consultoría para pequeñas empresas y organizaciones sin fines de lucro, y su misión principal es ayudar a las pequeñas empresas de Chicago a ser más competitivas. Esteban Pérez nació y se crió en los barrios de Bridgeport y Pilsen de Chicago. Como hijo de inmigrantes mexicanos muy involucrados en el mundo sin fin de lucro, sabía que quería ayudar a las personas necesitadas desde una edad temprana. Durante su tiempo en DePaul, Esteban fue un organizador comunitario en Pilsen para la legislación de inmigración y encarcelamiento masivo, mientras participaba en muchos programas de emprendimiento para comprender mejor cómo marcar la diferencia en el mundo actual. En su tiempo libre, a Esteban le gusta construir computadoras y ahora está aprendiendo programación, haciendo un videojuego con un grupo cercano de amigos. Para mantenerse activo, le gusta andar en patineta, jugar al frisbee y enseñarle a su perro a jugar fútbol. Ok, muy bien, Esteban, bienvenido, por favor, y te escuchamos. Gracias.
Hola, hola. Gracias por tenerme hoy, invitándome. I'm here today to talk a little bit about financial prep. I'm going to share my screen real quick, a ver si pueden verlo. Okay. Yeah, ¿está bien? Okay, perfecto. Entonces, thank you for being here again. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about financial business strategies and then project management using Agile and Scrum. If you haven't heard those terms before, Agile and Scrum are methodologies in which you can do project management. They aren't necessarily software as much as they are, again, a methodology and a philosophy to do it effectively and fast. We're going to start with some financial preparation, just generic business 101. These are some fundamentals that I think would really help not only you in starting a business, but also just in general, managing projects, managing departments that you might be head of. So yeah, we're going to start with file storage. File storage is extremely important in today's age because of cybersecurity issues. It's extremely useful in stopping those cybersecurity, or at least preventing some cybersecurity attacks, and having backups in case of an attack or in case of any kind of accidental loss or even an outage of the internet. Because you might be using software like Google Drive, OneDrive, or Dropbox to hold all of your confidential information or your documents, and having that physical backup as well as the cloud backup is going to prove very useful in case of any kind of disaster, outage, or hack, God forbid. So I really recommend having a file structure that's organized and simple. It doesn't have to be so complex. It should really be in the order that you organize your business in your head. I've met a lot of small businesses, a lot of small business clients that have told me that their entire business is in their head. And that might work for you, but then when your team starts to grow, or when you're talking to someone outside of your business, it's going to be really hard to communicate those things or find some kind of file for them or find some kind of data point for them to be able to convey your message effectively. So I really recommend organizing it in the way that you can find it, the way that works for you. And then also for the more confidential files like your EIN, like employee information, either having that in a safe that's physical, and having it encrypted or locked in a confidential file. I know OneDrive is really good at this, having like a vault that's encrypted that you need a password for, and then the files themselves can have a different password. So you can really utilize these softwares to have the benefit of having them in the cloud, but also the benefit of encrypting them with that security. When you have your files organized and you have a decent structure, you can go into the bookkeeping process. And even though you're not going to have transactions right away, it's really important to start thinking about how you're going to do the accounting, how you're going to basically organize the financial part of your business. So I usually try and recommend that you separate business and personal bank accounts. When you have your EIN and you get your entity like an LLC or a corporation, you can use those two documents to set up a business bank account. So with that, it really, really helps you in categorizing and tracking transactions that are specific to your business, so that when you are organizing your financial statements, you don't have to go into the personal account and then into the business account, and then in the personal account, you have to like look through all of the transactions and highlight the right ones. I've done this for people, I've done this for businesses. It's really annoying and it tends to cost them a little bit more. So if you take the time to organize the bookkeeping and the finances, you might even save a lot of money with an accountant that you might need to file your taxes at the end of the year. Not even including all of the analysis and all of the fundamental knowledge that you're going to get when you do learn software like QuickBooks, Xero, etc. You might not be the bookkeeper or the accountant of your business, but as a business owner, you need to understand a little bit about Accounting 101 in order to just be able to at least read a financial statement. Because if you can read the financial statement, you can organize your thoughts, you can organize your data, and then also communicate with accountants, bankers, investors, etc. So this is like a structure that's very general for your timeline of how you manage a business, or how the business grows over time. You're starting with your legal entity, like I mentioned before, an LLC or a corporation, and both of these entities can be classified as an S corporation, which helps you save a little bit on taxes. And it is a little bit more complicated, but you essentially get the benefits of a corporation and an LLC as long as your business is small enough. It might cost a little bit more to set up your S corporation with an accountant, but if your sales are going to be big, if your business is going to grow really quickly, the savings on those taxes can pay off. You can then also have your bank account. You're also going to set up hopefully a website, buying your domain, buying your name that you selected for the LLC or the corporation, so that you just have it safe just in case anyone might buy the website, or if someone takes it. After that, you're going to go into your business plan. This is the most important part of this whole process, because this is the fundamental foundation of the business. Starting with your organizational structure. Who are your employees? Who are your partners? What roles do they fill? And what are the roles that are necessary to be able to start your business and sell your product, and then manage the maintenance after you're selling the product? So stuff like quality assurance, community management, etc. Thinking about the future and what are the pieces that you're going to need. That's really where the organizational structure comes in handy. And then also the way that they interact with each other, who delivers to who manages who, etc. With that, you can then start your market analysis. How big is your demographic? How many clients do you reasonably within the first year expect to hit? And then reasonably within 3 years expect to hit? With that, that really helps you understand the feasibility and the timeline that it's going to take for you to reach a certain amount of revenue. And for financial projections, a lot of my small business clients get really overwhelmed at this point, because it's very open, it's very abstract. It's hard to really nail down what a projection includes. And I always say start with the costs, because the costs are real. The costs are out there. There's a lot of data out there in how much these things might cost on average. Things even like rent based on square footage and the location. Things that are getting really detailed are out there that you can research on Google and other websites to figure out those startup costs. And just thinking freely of all of the things that you might pay for on a monthly basis, and also at the beginning as a startup cost. With that, as you can find a closer idea of what the cost is going to be, you can then really nail down the price. So it starts with the cost, and then you go to the price, and that's going to tell you your revenue. All of that tells you your potential profit. That's really the general structure of how you set up these financial projections. That's extremely important for being able to communicate the viability of your business alongside the market analysis to a potential investor, partner, even a vendor that's going to sell materials to you. After you have the business plan, you're going to have what's called a tech stack in some of the technology spaces, but it's really just a fancy word for what software are you using. If you're going to sell to clients or as a retail, you would really want a POS software. And this is point of sale for software like Clover, Square, wherever you're swiping, and that records all of your sales data. It's, for instance, really hard, close to impossible to get all of the data that you could get by dealing in cash, for instance. You don't get any of the information from the customer. You don't get any of those data points when you're working in cash. Then going into bookkeeping software. We talked a lot about this. It's really useful. Again, helping you find the fundamentals and being able to read your business outside of just what you feel in your mind. Then if you're going to pay yourself as a corporation, it's really, really important, or when you have employees, to use payroll software. Don't try and do your payroll manually. The taxes are too complicated, especially at the beginning. Human error, even if you know what you're doing, accountants can still have human error, which costs a lot of money in penalties. Payroll is really one of the more strict parts of the IRS that I highly recommend just using a software for, because it's not that expensive, especially if you're already at the point where you're paying a salary. One of the other important software types is marketing, specifically in automation of marketing. Because you can have, for instance, that email list from the POS software of all of the people that have gone into your store, and then you can take that email list and do automatic marketing. You might have heard of software like MailChimp that lets you send out newsletters and e-blasts, product updates that really get your community engaged with you and constantly coming in. Then with all of that data, you're going to compile it, analyze it, have someone help you with all of that, in order to generate financial reports like your income statement and balance sheet, to be able to give that to bankers, investors, and then have payroll reporting to be able to deliver to the government, or also just to analyze how much you're paying. Payroll is the most expensive cost in any business, and being able to analyze and act on your payroll cost is going to be the thing that really helps you reach profitability. And then accounting and security controls, kind of like what we talked about a little bit before with file storage. These are going to be all of the control risks. So things like who's depositing the cash at the end of the day, who can sign off on checks, what are the approval processes for these very sensitive and important confidential parts of the business. And then when you have all of this, you're basically up and running. You're basically selling and you're starting out with your operations. And this is where you really start to scale. Scaling is a different strategy all in and of itself, and it's really based on your growth. If you're selling more, that allows you to scale. If you make a bet, for instance, and take out a loan, that's really you saying, I think that when I make this investment in like a big machine, in an expansion of a new retail store, that it's going to work because I've proven my model. And when you have all of these balance sheets, income statements, payroll documents, that tells the banker that you're asking the loan for, that tells the banker, I know what I'm doing. I know that this works. I can prove that this works. Let me have this loan so that I can make this expansion and really take off. That really makes an investor or a banker know that you know what you're doing. So with this ideation and iteration stage where you're scaling, you're constantly working on the business as you scale. You're constantly working on the product as you scale because you want it to be a better product. You want it to be a better service. You have to listen to the customers in order to have that scale and constantly improve the product. And this is where Agile and Scrum/Kanban really come in. Agile is a strategy and philosophy for splitting a project into different stages or sprints. You're going to hear sprints a lot when you're talking about Agile or hearing about Agile. And a sprint is another fancy word of basically just saying project segments, project stages. These are going to be the sprints in which we complete this part, this feature, for instance. I want to have video calling in my project. That means we're going to have multiple sprints in order to implement that video call and push that update out to our users. Then we have the methodologies and the processes, the more tangible aspects of Agile, because Agile is just a philosophy. Agile is basically saying, this is the type of product or this is the type of project that needs constant, fast, repetitive, or concurring or consecutive iterations, and updates. And then the way that we do that is through Scrum, Kanban, and other types of organizational software that we could use. So that allows us to iterate really quickly. But the philosophy of Agile is really broken up into 4 big parts. There's some more different kind of points that are out there, but the 4 main big pieces of Agile is starting with individuals and interactions over processes and tools. This is really saying that we're prioritizing our human capital, making sure that everyone is on the same page, making sure that everyone feels heard, and really kind of democratizing the process of design and input, really not letting it just be someone at the top just telling people what to do, but opening it up to those human capital, the ideas that everyone has. The other pillar on the right is software that works over comprehensive documentation. So this is really kind of this lean methodology of sticking with what works, keeping it simple, not needing to have a 20-page process handbook that no one really reads for a part of like development or a part of HR, really just keeping it down to the tool that works as quickly as we can make it work. And then third, we're going to have our customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And what this means is really being able to maintain that relationship, kind of going back to what we were talking about with like MailChimp in automatic marketing, having that authentic interaction and collaboration with your customer in saying, the customer is right here. They're saying that this is a problem, or they're saying that they like this. Let's focus on that. Let's act on that, instead of trying to nickel and dime and get every single dollar that you can get out of your client, because then they might feel cheated or they might feel like they paid too much, and then you lose that customer. So it's really important to, again, stick with that human part of the business. And then the fourth, and probably the most important, is responding to change over sticking with the plan. This really means that you're improvising. Again, kind of going back to customer collaboration, you're reacting to the feedback and the external factors that influence your business, so that you're not just sticking with the original plan that you had when you might have written your business plan, when you might have written your organizational structure. You don't have to stick with that forever. You're reacting and reiterating. This is about iteration all the time. And so now that we understand the Agile philosophy, we go into the methodology of, for instance, one of the most popular methodologies is the Scrum cycle. And in this case, we're starting all the way on the left with our product backlog. And this is a fancy way of saying this is the list of things that we want in the product, or the list of things that we need to accomplish in order to get this out the door with the features that we want. And so when you have that product list, for instance, again, going into, I want video calling in my app. So video calling is going to be one of the pieces of this product backlog in which we start creating sprints, or we start having sprints with our team. So we're going to go into, for instance, grabbing video calling, and we're going to start planning some sprints using, again, then breaking that down into what are the different tasks that need to happen for the video calling feature. So we have our programmers, we have our UX designers, we have our marketers, we have our quality assurance people that are going to have their own tasks to make sure that this all gets done at the same time. And again, we can push this out as soon as possible. One of the beautiful things about Agile, Scrum, Kanban is that it's really effective at finding and dealing with bottlenecks. Bottlenecks meaning things that are holding up another department. I need the art department in order to implement this UI piece. That really helps you get everyone on the same page at the same time to be able to get that out the door. So then when you have those tasks and you have your Scrum team, it doesn't have to be daily, but it's effective. Having those daily meetings at the beginning or at the end where you break down, this is my task, this is what I did yesterday, here are the problems I might have, here's the help I might need, or things are going really well. And this really helps, again, everyone get on the same page, everyone feels heard, no one feels lost, and again, just helps everyone. So then when you have that Scrum cycle complete, that daily, for instance, one day of that Scrum in that sprint, then you can increment or iterate or implement that part into the product, and then see what happens. Then you have your sprint review. And here you can look back and you can say, this didn't work well. I think we as employees, as a team, were ineffective or inefficient in this way. Let's change that for the next one. So there's so much iteration. It's like there's just this whole theme of iteration. You're going to see like a million little cycles essentially, because in every piece of the process, you're still looking at the process in and of itself and saying, this doesn't work, let's change it right now. Because this is trying to go around what usually happens in larger, for instance, corporate environments, where it couldn't take weeks to even months or even a year if they have a budget locked in to make a change really quickly. This works really well with small businesses, tech startups, really anywhere where you have a young, scrappy team that wants to get things out the door really quickly. Then we have our Kanban board. Kanban is a very effective tool that you can actually use with Scrum if you want, but it really helps you get an idea of, again, going back to Scrum, these sprint backlogs, these kind of tasks. Kanban breaks up those tasks into sticky notes or cards, whatever you want to call them, in kind of like an Excel sheet. It's a grid of columns and rows that you can put, for instance, an attached document into. You can write a description. You can assign one of these cards to another person. So everyone has access to this Kanban. Everyone knows what they're doing. And everyone can also know what everyone else is doing so that we have a better idea. A lot of organizations tend to kind of operate in silos, where sometimes the marketing team doesn't need to know what the development team is doing, but just having that insight, having that clear communication can help the marketing team come up with a better idea, or help the development team stay in line with some of the objectives that the marketing team has, even though they don't talk to each other ever. So here you can see that we have columns for the backlog. Again, the backlog meaning the list of things that need to happen, and then moving those to the right as they progress. So starting with in progress, then the peer review for the team, testing, and then when it's done. Sometimes there's other columns. You can really do whatever you want with this. So you can have a column for bugs. You can have a column for sending it out to another vendor, for instance. You can have a column for bottlenecks, saying, hey, I finished my part, but I'm waiting on this. That's in this column, and maybe that's a priority. This really helps you. All of these methodologies help you have a better idea of what's going on in the business. But again, one of the main themes is democratizing this. So having everyone kind of be on board, feel heard, feel communicative. And so that's really an overview of financial business strategy and then project management with Agile and Scrum. These things go really hand in hand together. I know we went very general today, so it's very much an overview, but if you have any kinds of questions or want to reach out, just let me know, or here in the Q&A after. And thank you again. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Esteban. Thank you very much. So we have actually some questions. So if you wish, we can do now or at least.
However you guys want, whatever works for you. I can take the questions now or later.
Okay. So following a little bit about our program, so now we will continue with Jacob, and at the end we're going to ask, but we're already prepared some, so we get some from the social media. So, okay, so I'm going to introduce you, Jacob. Jacob is here actually with us, and I'm going to read the information of him. So, Jacob Pérez, and I'm going to read this in Spanish, es el director de la región de los Grandes Lagos del DOT de Estados Unidos para el Centro de Recursos de Transporte para Pequeñas Empresas. Es responsable de todos los entregables relacionados con este acuerdo de cooperación durante las últimas 2 décadas. Jacob Pérez ha dedicado su carrera profesional a trabajar en el mundo empresarial, académico y sin fines de lucro, desde abrir una escuela charter en Nueva Orleans, posterior a Katrina, hasta servir como incubadora de nuevas organizaciones sin fines de lucro. Nacido y criado en el vecindario de La Villita de Chicago, Jacob obtuvo su título universitario de la Universidad de Illinois en Urbana y más recientemente una maestría en Administración de Empresas de la Universidad Dominicana. Se desempeñó como director de alcance de UNAM Chicago, colaborando con universidades locales y organizaciones comunitarias que incluían ofrecer cursos de desarrollo de pequeñas empresas para empresarios que buscan iniciar o hacer crecer sus negocios. En su tiempo libre le gusta jugar baloncesto, juegos de cartas y pasar el tiempo con su hijo. Muy bien, entonces Jacob Pérez, que es el SBTRC Project Director, por favor, welcome again, and please, we will listen to you.
Thank you very much, Misty. Y saludos a todos. Hello, everybody. Yes, again, my name is Jacob Perez. I'm the Great Lakes Region Director for the Small Business Transportation Resource Center. Yeah, and one thing that wasn't mentioned there, I did used to work for UNAM here in the city of Chicago. So again, very familiar doing the position there of Marcos, welcoming the students that would come from the Facultad de Medicina de Derecho doing these programs. So again, it's a really pleasure to be here with you today and to see the students, you know, because again, it's always great to talk about Chicago and stuff that's going on here. So with that being said, let me just go to the presentation here. Again, my name is Jacob Perez, right? The program that I'm going to talk about, well, the program that I'm in charge of here at the Chamber of Commerce is funded by and operated by the U.S. Department of Transportation, right? So it's a federal agency, right? As you can see from the map here, we're one of 11 federal agencies across the country. And my region is there in the blue, as you can see. So we service all the states of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, right? And basically what we do, our mission and the purpose of our office is to help small businesses, right? Is to help small businesses so that they can build their capacity so they can bid on federal contracts. Again, I work for the U.S. Department of Transportation, right? We're a federal agency, okay? So there's a lot of advantages, right? When you want to work for the federal government, right? Nobody in the world buys more than the U.S. government. Nobody, right? The U.S., it's the largest marketplace in the world, right? And anybody can enter that marketplace, right? Anybody can, right? You can sam.gov, you go in your business, you register, you're there, right? Whatever it is, again, and the United States buys everything. You name it, the United States buys it, right? And so, of course, right, one of the biggest things they procure, right, or they, again, that this process, right, of getting services, right, is a lot of infrastructure. And I'm probably sure you've heard of all this money coming there, or money that has been allocated by our government for infrastructure projects, right? Roads, bridges, airports, right? The largest money ever allotted to these kind of infrastructure bills, right? The bill was passed last year, the bipartisan infrastructure law. So that means that there's a lot of money coming, right? A lot of extra money coming to, again, infrastructure, right? Construction, right? But it's a big umbrella. It's a big umbrella when you talk about the infrastructure, right? It's not just roads and bridges, right? A lot of it is EV, electrical vehicles that I'm sure you've heard about, right? From new technologies, new batteries to stations, right? And where you can charge them, right? So our job, right? Our job here at the SBTRCs is to help these small businesses so that they can take advantage of some of this money coming, right? How can they access all this opportunity, right? For all this money that's coming, right? And most of the time, the government gives the money to these big companies. We call them primes, right? Power, right? These are big companies, right? And then what we do, they could get a contract of $2 billion, right? You can say, right? And in this contract that they have of $2 billion, because it's federal funds, right? Because it's a federal contract, 20% of that has to go to DBEs, what we call minority and disadvantaged business enterprises, right? And that is a minority-owned business, minority-owned, women-owned, or veteran-owned, right? It's one of those, right? Minority-owned, women-owned, or veteran-owned, right? And then they're certified, right? They're certified through the federal government, right? So when one of these big prime companies gets like a $2 billion contract, 20% of the work or 20% of that money has to go to one of these small businesses by law, right? It has to, right? That's a lot of money, right? We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, right? From $2 billion, 20% has to go to minority-owned firms. But that's a lot, right? So we try and connect these smaller firms with those opportunities, right? So that's kind of, to put it easier, right? To put it in a simpler way, right? We offer a lot of one-on-one work, right? Business analysis. It really depends on the maturity, where the small business is, right? Some of them need a lot more help with the procurement, kind of like the bureaucracy, you can say, kind of like the paperwork side of it takes to work with the federal government. Because like I said, the federal government requires a lot of follow-up, right? They pay well, right? When you get the contract, it's good. The problem when you do have the United States government as a client is that they pay well, but they don't pay on time. And that's a big problem, especially for a small company. For a big company, they have money, right? All right, you can't pay me in 2 months, don't worry, right? They have other money, right, to help them, right? A small company doesn't have that luxury, right? A small company needs to be paid on time, right? They need to pay their employees, right? They need to get more material, right? So, and it's a challenge, right? So that's some of the things that we kind of try to help make these smaller businesses understand before they start to work for the federal government, right? So the government doesn't pay on time, and they require a lot of paperwork, right? A lot of paperwork, right? I mean, it's just part of the process, right? So those are kind of some of the challenges that these small businesses face that kind of keeps them from really applying for these federal contracts, right? So again, like I said, this is a list of all the different things that we can kind of help with. And here at the chamber, we have subject matter experts, right? You heard Esteban talk about, again, the finances. So we have a small business that is having problem with their books or keeping problem with the money. Well, we'll recommend them over to Esteban, right? If they need more market research, well, we do have other business advisors that focus specifically on that, right? One of the big things that keeps a lot of small businesses, right, from venturing into the world of federal contract is bonding, right? And this is probably one of the parts where we help out a lot with. Bonding is, you can say, one of those magic words in English because it means everything. There are so many, if you look up the definition of bonding, oh boy, you're going to get a lot of different answers because it means a lot of different things depending how you use it, right? In essence, it means, you can say it means a promise to pay back a debt. That's what it means, really, you know, in essence, right? If you break it down very, very simply, right? You making a promise that you're going to pay something back, right? Something that you use, something that you did. So it could be a service or a good, right? In this instance, right? Again, we're talking about contracts at the federal government, right? Before the federal government is going to give a $2 billion contract to one of these prime companies, right? This prime company has to be bonded for $2 billion, right? So what does that mean? It means that the government is protecting itself in case this company can't do the work, right? If the company gives this contract, right, a $2 billion contract, and they can't do the work, right, or they don't do the work, well, that's a lot of money, right? That's an investment being lost. Well, that company has to be bonded. So it's like an insurance, right? So in case the company fails to do the work, the bond will cover the cost. So then that way the federal government doesn't lose money, right? So what does that mean? If you want $1 billion contract, guess what? You need to have a bond for how much? $1 billion, right? Same thing again, and bonds can be millions, billions, or they can be very small amounts, right? For the companies that we work with, right? Especially if there's a small company that does landscaping, you can say, right? I want to work for the U.S. Department of Transportation. The highways have a lot of grass, right? There's a lot of grass along the highways that has to be cut, all right? Well, we need to give out a contract, right? Maybe $500,000, all right? We have a $500,000 contract to take care of these roads here. All right, well, then now this company can go out and get a $500,000 bond, right? And there's programs and we kind of help them with that, right? We kind of help them learn about the process. What is bonding, how much they need, right? And here's a little example of the different types of bonds that there are. There are many, but I'm not going to get specific, right? And there are a lot of programs to help these companies get bonded so they can do some of this work, right? This is important because this goes back to sometimes of what Esteban was saying, right? And when it talks about how do we evaluate a business, right? And to make them, if they're going to be eligible, right? How does any bank, right? Or any financial institution, because it's not just banks, right? But any financial institution judge the character of business to decide whether they're going to give them money, give them a loan or give them a bond or say no, right? And when we talk about the bonding world, they look at these three things. And you heard the three famous C's, right? You hear this a lot, right? Among the financial, but I think with bankers, there's 5 C's. But for the banking, it's 3 C's, right? Capacity, capital, and character, right? Number one, we talk about capacity, right? Looking at, does this small business have the infrastructure to do the work it's saying, right? Does it have the employees? Does it have the trucks? Does it have the engineers? Does it have the resources, right? That's what we're talking about, capacity, right? Does it have the capacity to do this, right? Those are one of the things they're going to look at first, right? So if you're a small business, right, and you want a $2 million bond, right, because you're going to get this work with the federal government, they want to make sure you can do the work first, right? They want to make sure, all right, you said you're going to be trucking and you're going to move materials. Where are the trucks? How many do you got, right? Do you have the drivers, right? They want to make sure you have the capacity to do the work, all right? Number 3, capital. Capital is money, right? Cash is king. So another famous saying that you'll hear, modismo here in the United States. And it's true, very, very true. Cash is king, capital, right? How liquid you are, right? Money is important. It's the United States, right? Nothing goes around without money, right? And before you can, and if you want more money, well, you need to have money, right? It's the catch-22, right? So how profitable are you, right? What's your capital, right? Right? What are your assets, right? What are the other accounts, right, that you can use, right, to boost this up, right, to increase your capital is worthy, right? Again, but that's basically, again, based on how much cash you have on hand and capital you have on hand, right? Because again, that all increases the amount of bonding potentially. And last but not least is character, right? Again, I've done many of these sessions and listening to this world, and if you speak to any of the bond surety agents, right, and if they ask you to rate these from 1, 2, or 3, which one is the most important, right? They're all important. All of them are, right? You need capacity, right? You need capital, right, to get money, right? But the most important of all of these, they would say, is character, right? That's the most important. And a surety agent will tell you, oh yeah, I mean, I can have a business owner that is a millionaire, right? And he's rich, right? But he has all these lawsuits because he doesn't pay people, right? Am I going to want to get into someone, right? Am I going to want to give this guy a loan? He has a lot of money, right? He has a lot of capital and he has capacity. He can do the work, but he has all these lawsuits and all these people suing him because he doesn't pay, right? Right? That's not good, right? Or you can have a small business, right? A small business owner, right? Who he might not have a lot of capacity, right? He might not have a lot of capital or a lot of money, but you can see that every job that he's done, he's always finished. He's always finished every job. And he's been doing this for 20 years, right? And you've worked with him for a long time and you know him, right? That counts a lot more, especially for a surety agent, because they need to trust you, right? Because there are so many things that can go wrong, right, in this process, right? So many things, right? But if you have solid character, right, a surety agent will look past capital issues or will look past capacity issues. If you have strong character, good credit, right, strong reputation, right, an honest person, and knowing that, hey, you know what? I'll take a risk on you because I know that you always accomplish and you always do what you say you're going to do. Right. So again, and then the other 3 are like collateral, right? I think that's one of them. All right. Again, more money, right? Talking about money, collateral and something else. But these are the 3 we focus on for our program. And this is talking about some of the bonding programs that we don't really have to talk about really for you. This is just a snapshot of the different surety agents. Again, all these are different agencies that work with banks that give bonds. Again, what I was talking about, bonds for like jobs, for construction, for those that want to work for the federal government. So as you can see, there's a lot. Of course there is, right? Because again, a lot of people want to work for the federal government, right? And the minute you start doing that, you need to contact one of these people, right? To give you a bond so you can do the work. And I'm going to get a little bit into now, just a little shift real quick into the chamber, right? Because everything I've been talking about now is really my work with the U.S. Department of Transportation, right? But all of that is kind of the work that I do is reflected in the numbers of the chamber, right? And just to give you an idea, again, and I know Jaime mentioned in the beginning, right? We're one of the strongest, if not the, or most influential Hispanic chamber in the country, right? Again, we have a Hispanic chamber. Our focus is the Latino community, right? A lot of the workshop we offer are in Spanish. We're bilingual, right? A lot of the businesses that the DBs that I work with, all right, are Latino businesses. So we focus on them, bridging the gap, getting them more involved within this process. And these are just some of the numbers, right? And 80, almost 9,000 jobs helped retained by the chamber, right? And this is across the board of the chamber of all our programs, because we have several programs here at the chamber, right? The two that Esteban talked about, right? We have the Navigator, we have the PTAC, we have several programs, right? And this is a reflection of all the programs across the board, right? And access to financial resources, right? Contracts over 132 million, right? And that includes some of the bonding, right? Some of the opportunities that we provided for bonding, counseling hours, right? Again, this is in year 2021, almost 11,000 counseling hours, 55 events, right? How many members assisted? Over 10,000, again, from anywhere from with marketing to finance to bonding, you name it. And again, almost 500 served through the SBDC, right? Again, and some of the other one-on-one business counseling, right? Through the small business, again, the SBDC, almost 2,000. Oops. Again, and other money, again, another, again, just thresholds, right? Awards and 38.9 million through my program, right? The Small Business Transportation Resource Center, right? That's not only bonding, but that's the capital projects. It's the small businesses that were awarded contracts actually to work, to do for the, either on the local level, it could be on a city, on a state, or on a federal level. So as you can see, the chamber does a lot, right? Through all its programs, right? And all these things have impact, this is all money, this is real money. This is real opportunity, and real growth for a lot of our businesses. Just to give you an idea of, again, now I'm shifting back to the U.S. Department of Transportation. Sorry, go back and forth, right? But this is on a federal level, right? And as you can see, this is just, well, we are like one of the biggest agencies, right? There are several other federal agencies, right? But the U.S. Department is big because, as you can see, all these other fall under us. The FAA, which is the airports, the Federal Highway, right, which is right here, right? But you can see where most of the money goes, right? That the U.S. Department of Transportation gets, right? And as you can see, a majority of it goes to airports, right? It's a lot of money, right? Again, and the next largest is the Federal Highway, again, roads, bridges, construction. Just to give you an idea of where the money goes, gives you a better snapshot. And again, and this is the small business goals that the U.S. Department kind of puts on itself. Again, I was talking about women-owned, right? DBEs, right? Service veteran-owned, disabled. These are all different demographic social groups, right? That we kind of help with, right? And these are the goals, right? That the government-wide, right? They want to get 23% of small businesses opportunities, right? Here at the U.S. Department, here at the U.S. DOT, we aim for 34%, right? Of those, we aim like at least five to be women-owned, right? So again, this kind of gives you an idea of some of the goals, right? And then here are some of the achievements, right? The goal is 32, right? The small business, the goal was 32, the achievement 33, right? With a total of 2.5 billion awarded to small businesses, right? The goal for women-owned small business was 5. The achievement, they got 8, right? So they went a little higher, right? A total of 583 million, right? So as you can see, the small disadvantaged business, right? The goal was 5. They got 18%, right? They more than tripled it, right? 1.4 billion of money, right? And service disabled veterans, again, a goal 3.3, almost 4% going to service disabled veteran-owned businesses. I'm not going to get into NEAS codes. So just to running through, here is a snapshot of just some of the other of the federal agencies that exist, just to give you an idea, right? As you can see, there's many, right? This is where all the money comes from all the projects, right? From all the infrastructure projects, right? They get filtered through the US DOT and then through these respective administrations, right? And then from there, it gets distributed again. So that's where, if you're a small business and you're looking for an opportunity, right, to bid on something, you would want to go to one of these websites or federal agencies, right? And then from there, you can see the work that they're doing particular, right? Because again, there's a lot of them, right? So that's kind of our job, to make, to help a lot of these businesses kind of navigate this procurement process, right? And then we also help on a federal level, right? Being advocates, Jaime, constantly, talking to politicians in Springfield to kind of change legislation to kind of make it easier for some of these small businesses to get these federal contracts. And there's a lot of ways of doing that, unbundling bid opportunities. There's a lot of ways to do that. But when it's law, it's a lot more, it's easier to enforce. So we can hold these big companies and the federal government accountable, so that if they don't reach their goals, there's penalties. Because like I said, there's a lot of opportunity here in the United States, and especially for small businesses, and there's a lot of programs out there. So that's kind of our job, to make sure that we educate our community, right? Those Latinos, los Mexicanos that we work with, and make sure that they take advantage of this. Again, because that's why these things exist, and that's why chambers exist, to make sure, to facilitate the access to these programs. Very good. So with that, Mitzi, I'll be happy to, I know Esteban's still here, but happy to answer any questions, or I'm sure there should be a couple. So
thank you very much, Jacob, again. So yes, we have a couple of questions now for Esteban and for you, Jacob. So we're going to start with Esteban, considering, of course, the timing. So Esteban, one question is, could that model of softwares be adapted to the models of Mexican micro enterprises? Sign of your point of view, of course.
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, is by micro enterprise, you're saying like basically a micro business, also like something under 5 employees, 10 employees. And honestly, a lot of the software companies that I work with at the Latin Tech Incubator are micro businesses that start out. I work with businesses that start out as just an idea. And a lot of them do use this Scrum model. But outside of the tech industry, you can also use this for just a product, something even like a restaurant, using Scrum or using Agile to track, for instance, a new meal that you want to design, something that you're trying to test in the market, seeing how your customers react to it. So the reason why Agile is more of a philosophy more than just like a tool is that you can use it on anything if you're creative enough. And if it's useful, sometimes it's not. But yeah, you can totally use it in any kind of environment.
Okay, great. So actually, this is another question that has something to do with this. If the startup doesn't have enough capital to acquire software, could the strategy still work?
Yeah, no, this strategy is for any kind of business, regardless of capital. You are at, unfortunately, a disadvantage, kind of like what Jacob was saying. It's a catch-22. You need to have money to make money. But kind of what we were talking about in the beginning with those financial projections, with the organizational structure, having as much of that documentation written down and thought through as possible, that's all free. Like all that information is free. And so if you can get that down somewhere, in a drive, or being able to print it out, they might be able to invest in you more. You are probably going to pay interest or share equity in your business, which, is what you're paying for that opportunity sometimes. But yeah, having that preparedness as soon as possible is really going to help you get more chances and more opportunities to get capital if you don't have any.
Okay, great. So actually it could help. In your point of view, how the information technologies have changed the way that the companies are operating nowadays?
Oh yeah, I mean, combining our IT companies with our new IT companies with COVID, especially, a lot of our businesses that we deal with, Jacob and I, and at the IHCC, they were technologically behind in a lot of ways. A lot of my job is also, training small business owners and how to use even QuickBooks. Sometimes I'm meeting business owners that still have everything on an Excel sheet or written down on a piece of paper. And that's really where technology can come in and revamp small businesses, taquerias, like whoever you are. Small businesses have been really taking advantage of the new technology because it's also based on how accessible that technology is. It can be software that's cheap as a subscription model, and it also has to be designed to be accessible and not so jargon heavy, not so engineering heavy, so that everyone can take advantage of them.
That's great. So talking about Latin America, one person asked, what is the most important challenge that you visualize to get the implementation in Latin America of all this technology?
That's a great question. And I think we have a lot of tech companies that are starting to get interested in hiring outside or penetrating a market in Latin America. We're getting a lot of tech companies that actually come to the incubator because of after COVID, we really opened up not only nationally, but internationally. We had startups coming from Panama, from Colombia. We work a lot, obviously, with Mexico, but being able to then create these pipelines is what breaks open that market. A lot of the times we're getting, for instance, pitch competitions from people who are based in Mexico or based in Colombia, and they're working with us to try and figure out a way to break into the American market. Where do they start first? How does that demographic look over there? We're seeing a lot more collaboration after COVID.
Great, so awesome. Thank you very much, Esteban. So I'm going to ask to Jacob a couple of questions that we also received. So the first one, Jacob, is after the pandemic, actually talking about this, with the new information update, what are the new topics that should be integrated into the education of students in international business, science perspective, of course?
Man, I guess what it shows us is that businesses have to be nimble. They have to be able to pivot. That's what a lot of them did. As you know, and this had affected the world, the supplier issues. You remember with the big boat that got stuck in the Panama Canal, and that caused chaos everywhere. And I had a lot of companies that they were buying trucks. And you know what? I'm going to go into trucking real quick, because that's where the opportunity is, yeah, so it's being nimble, being able to to see where the need is, and if you can, changing that, and learn and being very conscientious of that, because the pandemic exposed a lot of things, and it changed the way we live, really, to a certain degree, in a lot of ways, and how we do business. Now, when I was talking about bonds, bonds was always the federal government. When you work for the federal government, you needed a bond. Now they have bonds in the private industry. You see it a lot more in the private industry, not just when you have a federal contract. Why? Because of the supplier issues that were happening, and contractors weren't able to do jobs because they didn't have the wood, they didn't have the concrete, they didn't have the materials, so definitely having that foresight and being able to pivot where those needs are is definitely something to be, that you have to be able to move and shift and see where the demand is and go with it, for sure.
Okay, so what do you think that could be the future of transportation? Because now we're talking about the pandemic and all this, everything that changed, have changed, but in this case about the future, what do you think about the future of transportation?
The future of transportation. Well, right now, as an agency, the money right now is, although a lot of it is going to airports, the big talk is EV, right? Electrical vehicles. And right now, that's it. And that's really where a lot of not only money for infrastructure, but for research is going. And this infrastructure money, I mean, it's not just to build roads or electrical stations. If you have an idea for a battery, for a car battery, you can get money, and for research, because that's really a lot of it's going to that, and it's going to change. I mean, it's taking off, and if you get in the ground floor now, they're looking at the smart grids, where not just EV stations, but highways that will charge your car as you're driving. Man, that's where the money's going, and if you can do a battery, if you can make a battery that can take that that can harvest that, well, man, it's wide open. It's really wide open. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there, and we're just scratching the surface. And there's a lot of money, and that's the one thing with the federal government. They got a lot of money to just throw at people and be like, "Oh man, all right, $1 million for research on a new battery. Here you go." And it's coming. The money's there. So not only where it's going and where the government's money is focusing their money on, that's where a lot is going to take off. It just makes sense. If you put money there, there's going to be more innovation. There's going to be more people, again, focusing on that. So for sure.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Jacob. So we have one more question. What is the biggest challenge of transportation in a big city and in a small city versus one-to-one?
Oh, in a big city versus a small city? I mean, that's easy. I mean, just the big projects. I mean, again, and I can go by state, like a state like Minnesota, where there's big projects there, and there are, but it's nothing like Illinois or Michigan, right? Where there's a lot of work, there's a lot of work. There's large projects going on. There aren't enough small companies to meet the demand, that of all the infrastructure that's going on. So yeah, definitely opportunity. That's the number one difference, right? When you're in a small town, again, there's definitely not less movement, less infrastructure, less investment. So there's going to be less opportunity, Big city, big state, a lot more project, a lot more money for infrastructure. There's going to be a lot more opportunity going on for sure.
Okay, thank you very much, Jacob. And thank you, Esteban. I don't know if you would like any of you share something before we finish, something to add?
No, I mean, you can, or if you can send out our email addresses, you could always reach out to me and ask any kinds of questions that you need to for business strategy or financial expertise. And like Jacob was saying, we have other experts here at the IHCC. Thank
you very much, Esteban. And Jacob, something?
Oh yeah, again, with that being said, we're always open, and again, like I wish you'd be curious, like if you guys have any questions, something to learn more about, or you might know somebody, that can take it. We're here to help again. And it's always just you guys, programs like these are our best ambassadors, because then you go and talk to someone. Oh man, I talked to this guy or the chamber, and then it always goes full circle. And then they come back, and that's what it's about. That's what it's about. And people don't know that our services, it's free. It's completely 100% free. We don't charge people, I mean, and I wish just more people would take advantage of it, because again, and the number one thing is just because a lot of people don't know, or they're afraid to ask. And I think us as Mexicanos nos da vergüenza, right? And like, oh no, and like, and then even more hesitant. So yeah, kind of breaking down those cultural barriers where it's like, no, you're entitled to this. That's why other companies thrive, and that's why, again, it's, you're taking a risk, and using other people's money. Mexicanos use their own money. It's like, no, man, you got to use other people's money. And that way you don't lose yours, you lose theirs, That's the American way, that's how, again, that might sound, oh, that's evil. No, that's just how business is here. That's how business is, and you're being responsible. I'm not doing that. No, you're taking a risk. You don't put your house, you don't want to lose your house when you want to open your business. I'm not going to let you do that. No, I'm going to shift you the other way, put other assets aside. It's how you start your business, because a lot of, again, and it's those small things that make a big difference, then that way, you protect yourself. Generational wealth is something that, we didn't talk about, but that's what this is about. You know, it is, you know, like Latinos, man, you need to start thinking differently to take advantage of what's there. And it's, again, this isn't a handout. This is a benefit, you know, and your success equals our success. And it's not, it's secular, you know, it's all connected. So with that being said, yeah, again, reach out to us because that's how things get done. All right.
Great, thank you, Jacob, thank you, Stan. Because actually, this is the objective, right, of these kind of programs and from this program, and this is that the students and the people who is following us in YouTube and in all the social media, this is important, so right, that we could know what is happening in other places, think about other things that we don't used to think. So thank you for that, and thank you again for the Chambers of Commerce. Thank you for your time, for sharing here, and thank you, of course, Uriel, again, for your time and for sharing with us. And so we want to continue with our program. Thanks for today. We will meet us again tomorrow with this program. I don't know if you could share, please. Thank you. So this is our program that you have in our social media, just to watch this. So see you tomorrow at morning, and we will start at 10 a.m. And again, we will see you tomorrow. And thanks from Chicago, UNAM Chicago, and from Faculty of Accounting and Management. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.